This video will teach you the basics on how to spray using an HVLP sprayer. To start, we first of course need to add the paint to the gun. You can watch the video on spray gun cleaning and maintenance to understand more thoroughly how the gun works. Before pouring the paint, it is super important to mix it very thoroughly, especially with darker colors as the pigment separates from the rest of the product. A drill mixer is the most effective method for stirring paint. To add the paint, simply screw off this collar and remove the lid. Make sure you have a filter installed. Also double check that there is a sleeve inside the cup. Pour the paint in, leaving about ½ inch of extra room at the top. Make sure you wipe the excess paint off the edge of the can or the lid won't seal on right again. When you screw the collar back on, there is sometimes a gap, which causes the paint to leak. I hit it a few times and tighten it if that's the case, until you can see that it's screwed on perfectly evenly. Screw the gun on the top. Make sure you turn it as tight as you can. And finally, the air tube. The air tube plugs into this little nozzle down here and then goes into the bottom of the gun. This is what pressurizes the cup of paint. You can clip the tube to the collar to keep it out of the way. Just make sure not to kink or twist it, as that will restrict the airflow and reduce pressure. Let us go over how to adjust the sprayer. Before you learn any spraying techniques, it is super important to understand how to set up your sprayer correctly so that the paint is atomized properly and consistently. Atomized means the paint is blown into many tiny droplets of fluid. We want a nice fine spray so that the paint dries smooth. There are many variables to make sure the atomization happens correctly. This bottom knob adjusts the paint flow. What it actually does is provides a stopping point for the trigger, a max position if you will. In this image, it is set to the most flow possible. Turn it clockwise and the trigger will be allowed to depress further and more paint will flow out. Turn it counterclockwise and the opposite will happen. The top knob controls the amount of airflow. The airflow is what blows against the stream of paint and causes it to blow apart into tiny droplets and atomize. In this image, the knob is set to about 70%. You need enough air to atomize the amount of paint you have flowing out. If you turn the paint up, the air will need to be turned up as well to compensate. You don't necessarily want to just max out the air every time though, as too much air can cause issues such as bubbles in the finish, or it can even cause the droplets to dry mid-air before they land on the surfaces, which gives the paint a textured finish, which is not good. The entire front piece of the gun can be rotated, which adjusts the spray pattern shape. You can see the little holes along the sides here that blow on and atomize the paint stream. The orientation of the spray pattern is opposite to the orientation of the front of the gun. When the gun is vertical, like this, the spray pattern is horizontal, like this. And when the gun is horizontal, the spray pattern is vertical. You can also set it so that it is on a 45-degree angle, in which case the spray pattern is in a circle. You can also turn the collar that holds that piece in place. This adjusts the width of the spray pattern. When you tighten it all the way, the spray pattern gets larger, as you can see at the top of this image. When you loosen the collar, it gets smaller as seen below. When you increase the spray pattern size significantly, you may need to adjust the paint flow and air to keep the spray looking nice. More paint, and therefore more air, may be required for a larger spray pattern. We'll go over what a good spray pattern looks like soon. There is one more control, and that is the fan control on the sprayer machine itself. Turning this up increases the speed of the fan and therefore the pressure of the air. More pressure is needed for thicker paint. There are 10 levels to this adjustment. To turn the sprayer on, you can switch it either up or down. Down keeps it running all the time, while up will automatically start and stop it when it senses you've released pressure. The gun clips until the end of the hose like this. Let us now look at some examples of different spray patterns. To start, I have the gun set up like this. The air is set to about 70% and the paint flow to about 80%. The power level on the sprayer is at level 5. I will be spraying black lacquer, which is a little thinner than white lacquer, so I can turn the settings down a bit. If the paint were white, I would need to turn them up to compensate for the extra viscosity. You will learn more about the different products and their respective traits in the third spraying video. Let's start with a good example. You can see here that the spray pattern is about 7 inches wide, and around the edges the paint has been properly atomized into a fine mist. There are no large splattered droplets that could ruin the finish, only a fine mist. Think of it as spraying from an aerosol spray can. Splattered paint, or an uneven spray pattern, is bad. In this example, you can see the individual droplets of paint are far too spread out, and instead of getting a nice even coverage, we got an inconsistent splattering of paint. You can also see that the size of the droplets are not consistent with each other. Some are larger than others. This is what poor atomization looks like. The problem here is that there was not enough air to atomize the amount of paint flow set. To fix, turn up the airflow. If that still is not enough, you may also need to turn up the fan speed on the machine. Remember, the more paint flow you have set, the more air you need for proper atomization. In this example, the atomization is really nice, but you can see that the paint is way too thick and there is a really big drip right here in the middle. The problem here is likely that the sprayer had the paint flow set way too high. As I said, black paint is slightly thinner than lighter paint, so it will flow quicker and you don't need as much paint flow. This example looks similar to the second one in that the spray is too thin to give proper coverage, but you can see that unlike the other example, the atomization is still decent. In the example, I had all the gun settings correct, but then turned the fan speed down. There was not enough pressure to force the paint out. You can see this example looks really bad. What happened here is that the spray gun nozzle wasn't screwed down all the way. It is super important to assemble the gun correctly. See the video of gun cleaning and assembly to learn more. An uneven or crooked pattern can also happen if dry paint has clogged these 6 little holes, or is dried around the hole in the center that the paint comes out of. As you can see in these diagrams, not cleaning the gun properly can result in really bad effects. We'll go over proper gun cleaning and maintenance in a future video. In the next video, we will go over different motion techniques when it comes to spraying.